we explore some of the best stories of frontiers this year. We revisit our travels from KTVA to Cusp Ik to Tlingit country, the front lines of language preservation. One man is on a mission to revive his language in Southeast Alaska, David Cusp Ik, who was one of our first profiles here on Frontiers. And remember Cusp Ik making with Bridget Klein, how she stitches the fabric of her culture together.
For Frontiers with Rhonda McBride is provided by Cusp Ik Corporation and Spinard Builders Supply. Alaska, where there are old triumphs, but also new frontiers, with challenges as great as the state itself, but a belief the best is yet to come, bringing you the faces, the places, and the spirit of the last frontier. This is Frontiers with Rhonda McBride.
Welcome to the Best of Frontiers, where we take time out to look back on some of your favorite stories since our program began. Well, in this show, we revisit efforts across the state to preserve Native language and culture. And first, we take you up north to KTVA and Kotzebue, where the word Inupiaq means real or genuine. And as KTVA's Emily Carlson shows us, Inupiaq speakers genuinely feel the threat to their language is real.
Teaching 3-year-olds is tough. Try adding in a whole new language. Sprinkle in long, complicated words.
Their attention span is very short.
And a 3-minute lesson can be a daunting feat.
They want to play. I can't keep them very long to keep still and sit down.
But Esther Davidovics has what seems like endless patience when she's teaching Inupiaq. That's because she's passing down her ancestors' language. It's a labor of love.
It's my first language, and I was willing to keep it up. It was taught to me by my aunts and uncles, my parents, grandparents. The
65-year-old is one of just a handful of Inupiaq speakers left in Kotzebue. She's afraid without dedicated teachers like herself, the Inupiaq language could be silenced.
When I saw that they needed help here, I thought I'd volunteer.
1,500 miles northeast in KTVA, similar concerns from a different generation. 28-year-old Inupiaq teacher Flora Rexford sees the language slipping away right in front of her eyes.
A lot of the younger generation don't speak it or use it, or they'll use broken English.
Flora grew up in KTVA, but moved away to the big city for college. But she always missed home, and when the Inupiaq teacher here at the Harold Catholic School retired a few years ago, Flora felt it was fate and her ancestors stepping in.
And it's a part of you, who you are, and without it, I think you lose your, cultural identity.
When Flora got the job, she didn't speak fluent Inupiaq, so she hit the books.
Greetings, good morning.
And now uses a modern medium to pass down the ancient language of her ancestors. She posts everything from the word of the day.
Just cut them all the way down, find the bone.
To the art of preparing a goose.
All that I've known, or what my parents and grandparents have taught me, I pass it on to kids who don't have that opportunity or chance that I did.
Flora's mom, Marie, grew up speaking Inupiaq, but in grade school was forced to speak English.
And I used to always get hit on my hand with a ruler, really hard. Those rulers hurt. Look.
Since then, Marie mostly converses in English.
Another postcard?
Even with other Inupiaq speakers. When I asked her what language she speaks at home with her husband, Marie hung her head, her voice filled with sadness.
English. English. Sad. I try to have him speak Inupiaq, and then we just go right back to English.
The fear that her culture is drowning amidst American technology is real. So real, Marie quickly runs through the Inupiaq alphabet to make sure she remembers. Back in Kotzebue at Esther David Avik School, that fear is why the only language allowed at school is Inupiaq.
All the time, and when we do have to speak English, we whisper amongst each other, amongst the teachers.
Janine Sato is the director here at the only private Inupiaq immersion school in the country.
Nakachot Ilisagvate School.
Janine says it shouldn't be difficult for Alaskans to sound out Inupiaq words.
It's hard to pronounce, it's hard to speak the language, right?
But time and technology are taking its toll.
Because it's hard to come up with new words like computer or iPad or even a cell phone, in our language. So when we have to incorporate those English terminology in our everyday use.
The model is simple. Dedicated, experienced teachers like Esther reaching small groups of kids at a very early age. In Kaktovik, a different approach. A millennial using social media as a tool to inspire teens. Their methods may be generations apart, but their desire to save their language and their culture comes from the same place, the heart. Emily Carlson, KTVA 11 News.
Alaska is home to about 13,000 Inupiats, yet language experts believe only about 3,000 speak their language, most of them over the age of 40. While teachers in Kotzebue and Kaktovik may have different styles, they believe the language's best hope lies with the young. Well, our Best of Frontiers series continues with David Katzig, who also looks to the young to save his language. We take you to Juneau to see how this Tlingit elder hopes to keep not just words alive, but also a way of thinking and looking at the world. And harnessing nature's power. Mary Jane Litchard teaches about the healing properties of plants. Most of us take language for granted, but imagine if English was on the verge of extinction, words that allow us to share our deepest thoughts and feelings might be lost forever. Well, that's how David Katzig feels about Tlingit. He says language is the glue that holds a community together.
The name is Ankh, the place of the small lake. But that word, that sound at the end of the word Ankh, indicates an intimacy.
An intimacy with the land. David Katzig experiences when he speaks Tlingit.
You are a human being. And being human means you are very intelligent.
Words David said he heard when he lived with his grandparents in Klawock. David was groomed by grandparents on both sides to be a clan leader, reminded often that human intelligence is a gift to be used for the good of the community. Today in Juneau, you can find a few traces of the rich culture that thrived for thousands of years. But there are bridges to that world time almost forgot, bridges being built every day by elders determined their language will not die with them. What you're hearing is rare, a conversation in Tlingit carried on by two fluent speakers. There are fewer than 120 people on the entire planet who can do this.
Oh, that's good, that's good. I'll do the same.
Selena Everson and David Katzek are among a group of elders working to pass Tlingit on to the next generation. Selena says working with David helps her remember.
The stories I knew I forgot completely. I think when we were forbidden to speak our language, I wiped that out of my mind.
When Selena was 14, she was sent to the Sheldon Jackson School in Sitka, where she knew her older brothers had been punished for talking in Tlingit, so she stopped speaking her language completely.
You know, I get stuck on words because I didn't speak it. I didn't even teach my own children, and I feel bad about it.
She'll say a word that will bring out of me other words that I have heard. And sometimes it's just like a joy because it's like all of a sudden, like a fish jumping out of the water.
Language and culture, medicine dispensed generously here at Harborview Elementary, healing old hurts, and fortifying the young with words from David's childhood.
Most precious, noble child of the earth. This is the way the ancient ones spoke. Say, Ye'aweh. Ye'aweh. Goodness cheese. Goodness cheese. Ho, ho. Ho, ho.
Yes, it's true, says David in Tlingit. Thank you from our innermost being.
Say thank you in our language. Goodness cheese.
David is grateful his language is once again heard in Tlingit country, the sounds of young, proud voices. Only a generation ago, teachers tried to shame children into silence.
Whoever was speaking the Tlingit language, they would have to stand like this and hold the rock.
David was 8 when a teacher made him hold rocks, but he used his imagination to cope.
I said, I wonder what the rocks would tell the history about this people. How would the rocks tell us what happened in this area? They would tell great stories. I made a game out of it, as opposed to feeling like I was being punished. I never looked at it as being punished. I knew why they were doing it, but I was taught what you do and what other people do doesn't have anything to do with who I am. It has everything to do with who you are.
David says the tide has turned on Tlingit, and while the waves may die, the water remains, like language.
We're coming through a famine right now. There's a hunger such as we have never experienced in all the years of our lives. It's not a hunger for food,
but a hunger for language and culture.
Yandakin. Yandakin. Yes. Yes. Oh, you're a storyteller and a half already. The fact that you said Raven was flying really high.
As David tells a story about how Raven stole a fish right out of another bird's mouth, the children follow closely.
You can be hungry like Raven to get all kinds of knowledge.
David enjoys feeding these hungry birds here at Harborview, so much so he volunteers every Monday.
Can you hear it? Our language is calling out to us, saying, Ya Duchat, Ya Duchat, here I am, here I am. And we're answering the call. And in answering the call, we're not hoarding it to ourselves, we're giving it away. And that's the only way anything comes back.
Coming up, a staple garment in Alaska, and they never go out of style. The process of making a Cusp Ik, and she calls it the store outside her door. We'll revisit a healing tour with Mary Jane Litchard. Earlier this year, photographer Jacob Curtis and I went to Nome for the Rural Providers Conference to capture a grassroots sobriety movement in action. Well, the best part is we made some new friends, including Mary Jane Litchard, who not only invited us to dinner, but shared her knowledge about the healing properties of traditional plants and foods.
This one is stinkweed and fireweed.
Mary Jane Litchard has a passion for plants and their healing properties.
Our people have used it for centuries.
She has jars of stuff made from fireweed and wild celery to heal aches and pains.
I picked valerian and lungwort and also angelica from the beach, and it really works when you have a chest cold.
Almost ready for dinner.
Mary Jane also has a passion for traditional foods.
We're putting up sheefish from Kotzebue.
Frozen and to be eaten raw with seal oil.
Pickled walrus, bullhead whale.
There's a modern twist to this pickled potpourri.
I like fresh jalapenos.
Mary Jane's house is filled with all sorts of interesting stuff.
This is black lichen. It grows on the rocks.
She has salmon skins drying, plants curing.
And then this is a new batch from this year. It's nice and warm because I had it in the sunlight.
Newly gathered cottonwood buds soaking.
I'm going to do it for half a year, let it sit and I stir it once a week.
Eventually, she'll turn it into a massage oil.
This is my cottonwood bud oil.
The plant is a known anti-inflammatory. Mary Jane has promised to take us out in search of more healing and edible plants, but first we eat, a meal almost entirely of wild foods.
It's a lot of blueberries are growing, lots of blueberries.
Finally, Mary Jane takes us to what she calls the store outside her door. She also finds blackberries.
Little baby berries are coming up.
Mary Jane believes the practice of gathering wild foods is healthy too.
So they said that our ancestors really used to hike for many, many miles.
But that world changed.
Alcohol was introduced like 1870, I believe. And whole families used to brew and drink.
Since then, the path for many natives was never the same. Mary Jane suspects that she may be fetal alcohol affected because her mother drank during her pregnancy. She has some challenges, but says gathering wild foods is part of her therapy.
Oh, I just love this wind. No mosquitoes bothering you.
Mary Jane says the plants here are infused with energy from the long hours of daylight.
Our cells like vibrate, get happy that we're eating the foods of our ancestors, and it helps in the process of healing.
And that process of getting out into the country is also healing.
Like a couple decide to go sober, they would find interest in their culture about preserving, collecting.
It's amazing how many edible plants Mary Jane points out.
Way up there. And pick blackberries, cranberries.
Those are for another day.
I just strip them.
It's the tender shoots of the willow she's after right now.
You should try it. It's really good.
Mary Jane says she likes to mix these leaves in salad, but for now, we share the table with a muskox grazing nearby, dining with a view of Nome, enjoying the menu.
It makes your mouth have a very fresh feeling.
She's right about that. Well, Nome will host the Rural Providers Conference next year as well. It rotates every 2 years to a new community. Well, on our Frontiers program highlighting the Alaska Federation of Natives Convention, we also took a look at the Cusp Ik, the go-to garb for the gathering. KTVA's Sierra Stark shows us how the Cusp Ik makes both a fashion and a cultural statement.
You can tell by the steady hum of her sewing machine, it's busy season for Bridget Klein.
I'm working on a short Cusp Ik.
Bridget is gearing up for the Alaska Federation of Natives Convention in Anchorage. She's aiming to make 30 Cusp Iks to sell.
I can make a short one in 2.5 hours.
She learned the craft as a teenager.
56 years ago, this picture was taken.
Watching her mother in St. Mary's on the Yukon River.
How many children is that total?
She had 12.
Decades later, her mother's technique lives on.
Regular size, it's about this size.
Bridget's dining room table actually doubles as a cutting board.
I don't need a ruler. I've got my hands and my body to measure. If someone's arms are a little longer than mine, I adjust when I'm making the sleeve.
Every snip and every stitch is Bridget passing on a piece of her culture.
I've probably made thousands.
One Cusp Ik at a time.
These are modern. They came after the yarn was introduced.
At the Alaska Native Heritage Center, we spent some time appreciating the Cusp Ik's history with Teresa John.
It's a malakayak. It's a waterproof hat.
She teaches college courses in Alaska Native culture. Teresa reminds us, before the Cusp Ik came the parka.
There's 200 ground squirrel in this one parka. So after the introduction of the fabric to the region, in Nelson Island, the women started putting Cusp Iks on.
The garment itself dates back to the 1800s.
Here you see the Cusp Iks worn by men.
But Teresa says her fellow Nelson Islanders didn't get their hands on fabric until the 1950s.
That the women can fight for. No, yeah.
Photographs and display cases show the evolution of the garment, from traditional to modern. Once Teresa begins explaining the details behind her custom-made Cusp Ik,
I special ordered this Cusp Ik from my friend Lita Jimmy Galga.
It becomes clear. She's actually wearing her Inupiaq history on her sleeves.
The red specifically represented the bloodshed of our ancestors, of our people. And the black represent the time of depression from war.
The Cusp Iks Bridget makes now are a little different than the ones she grew up wearing.
Cusp Iks made from flour sacks, sugar sacks.
But she says the garment has survived generations.
My granddaughter's first Christmas Cusp Ik I made for her. She's 6 years old now.
And that makes Bridget's busy season worthwhile.
An original by Bridget Klein.
For Frontiers, I'm Sierra Starks.
Hope you enjoyed revisiting some of the frontiers that we explored this year. And from all of us here at KTVA, have a safe and happy holiday. And of course, may you find your own frontiers. We'll see you in 2016. Have a happy new year.